Given that cinematic popularity is trend-driven and all franchises end up falling out of favour at some point, it makes sense that most movie series eventually settle at an endpoint. No movie franchise can remain popular forever, and with that in mind, it's fair to say that these series are all circling the drain. They may very well be doomed. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 movie franchises that are probably doomed. Number 10, Ghostbusters. Some movies just don't have the juice to spawn a hit franchise, and Ghostbusters is certainly a prime example of that, even if it's impressively limped to a 5-film series regardless. Though the first 2 movies were sizable box office hits, 2016's all-female reboot was a monstrous flop. And though 2021's Ghostbusters Afterlife was a modest hit, it also cashed in most of the series' remaining nostalgia chips with its appearances by the legacy cast. Last year's follow-up, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, then confirmed that the IP had basically run dry of fun or interesting new ideas. And with its box office falling just shy of Afterlife's, indicates that the series has failed to grow an audience with younger viewers. Given that the legacy cast are getting old and the younger cast members will need to pick up the slack, it's a bit concerning that the franchise has failed to find success outside of people who've been Ghostbusters fans most of their lives. And though a sequel to Frozen Empire is in early development, it's a bit tough for anyone but the most die-hard and undemanding of Ghostbusters fans to muster much excitement for it. Who are you gonna call to fill those seats at the cinema, eh? Number 9, Star Wars. Much as it seems like Star Wars will outlive us all, it's also fair to say that the series' theatrical presence is in quite the tricky spot right now. For even the series' insatiable fans, The Rise of Skywalker felt like it truly closed the door on the Skywalker saga, warts and all. And so, where does big screen Star Wars go from here? The general reception to the new trio of heroes has been relatively divisive, and with Oscar Isaac and John Boyega both swearing off a return to the franchise, it forced the Daisy Ridley to carry it forward with a new movie centered around Rey. Except for as financially successful as the sequel trilogy definitely was, and as solid as Ridley is as Rey, is she really popular enough to help maintain the series' relevance in an ongoing capacity? It doesn't seem hugely likely. Now sure, the upcoming The Mandalorian and Grogu movie will probably perform well. I mean, everyone loves them some Baby Yoda, don't they? But with the OG Star Wars era now basically dead and buried, Star Wars desperately needs to get fans excited about a new era. Rey is not the most persuasive shepherd of the IP moving forward, which, coupled with Disney's struggles to get spin-off movies into production and find a replacement for producer Kathleen Kennedy, suggests that Star Wars is stuck in creative and commercial limbo. Though Disney's conveyor belt of TV content continues to chug along for better or worse, it is frankly shocking that in the 5.5 years since The Rise of Skywalker, we still don't have a new Star Wars movie even close to shooting. That is half a decade without any new big screen Star Wars, and that is way too long. Now, speaking of Star Wars, I want to know right now, what is the Star Wars project currently in development that you're most excited about? Let me know in the comments right down below, and then be sure to check out What Culture Star Wars once you've finished watching this video. Number 8, Horizon: An American Saga. Kevin Costner's hugely ambitious 4-part Western series, Horizon: An American Saga, released its first entry last June, where it received mixed reviews and flopped at the box office. However, Chapter 2 had already finished filming, and portions of Chapter 3 had even been shot, leaving Costner's passion project, of which he invested almost $40 million of his own money, in quite an awkward spot. Furthermore, Chapter 1's lackluster box office performance caused Chapter 2 to be taken off the release calendar. And though it did premiere at the Venice Film Festival last September, 6 months later, at time of recording, it is still without a new release date. And to make matters worse, early reviews for Chapter 2 have been just as mixed as those for Chapter 1, making it highly unlikely that it wins many skeptics over. Though Costner remains adamant that he'll find a way to complete the epic project, given that Chapter 2 remains without a release date, Chapter 3 hasn't resumed filming, and the commercial prospects of both of these movies are dismal at best. It's tough to see how Costner will get all the way to Chapter 4, really. Good luck, Kev. Man, I do hope he gets his Western baby fully out there. But let's be honest, it is not looking good. Short of a streaming service hopping aboard and bailing the Enterprise out. Number 7, Mad Max. It is seriously impressive that the Mad Max franchise has endured for so damn long, releasing 5 movies over the course of 45 years, each of which have been directed and co-written by the legendary George Miller. It's basically unheard of for any series to maintain such a singular creative vision for the better part of a half-century. Though, sad as it is to say, we've likely just seen the very end of the IP, at least as we know it, with recent prequel Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, flopping at the box office. Miller is now probably gonna struggle to get his planned Mad Max Fury Road sequel, The Wasteland, off the ground. Even though Miller remains a hugely enthusiastic creative at 80 years young, Warner Bros. Discovery's relatively precarious financial situation makes it highly unlikely that they'll ever roll the dice on another Mad Max, especially not one with the blockbuster-sized budget that Miller would surely want. And so that is sadly probably all she wrote for Mad Max, folks, especially as the franchise is unlikely to continue with another filmmaker once Miller is sadly no longer with us. Number 5, Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean is in something of a damned if you do, damned if you don't predicament. Because while Disney has been pursuing a 6th entry into the franchise since Dead Men Tell No Tales released in 2017, they've struggled to figure it out. On one hand, many fans won't have much interest in the film if Johnny Depp isn't involved as series icon Jack Sparrow. But on the other, Depp's star power has faded considerably since 2017, exacerbated by his very public divorce from and legal dispute with Amber Heard. Disney flirted with rebooting the franchise with Margot Robbie as the new lead, though that ultimately didn't pan out, and so Pirates of the Caribbean finds itself at something of an impasse. It's certainly fair to say that Pirates feels long past its expiration date as an IP, and though the 5th film grossed close to $800 million worldwide in 2017, it's tough to picture a new sans Depp movie thriving in the current theatrical environment. Furthermore, by the time a new Pirates film probably releases, which could be as late as 2030 at this rate, half a damn decade away, this series may well have lost all that remains of its cultural cachet, especially with younger audiences who didn't grow up with it. Look, it's okay for franchises to just end, you know, even ones with over $4.5 billion in box office receipts. Though Disney naturally doesn't want to hear that, do they? And they'll only stop pursuing new Pirates movies when every last penny has been well and truly milked. Number 4, Star Trek. Not unlike Star Wars, Star Trek is still an objectively huge media empire, whose current focus is on a number of ongoing TV series. But the cinematic side of the franchise has been in dire straits for almost an entire decade, given that its last big screen adventure was 2016's Star Trek Beyond. Beyond came out 9 years ago this summer, easily eclipsing the previous 6.5-year gap between Star Trek Nemesis and J.J. Abrams' 2009 franchise reboot. A big part of the problem holding up a new Trek movie? Well, Beyond underperformed commercially on a huge budget, and so Paramount has been reluctant to greenlight Star Trek 4 with an inevitably larger price tag, given cast salaries and so on. Star Chris Pine has himself expressed a desire for a smaller scale Trek movie that would give it a greater chance of commercial success. And yet, despite numerous filmmakers being associated with various iterations of Trek 4, it still hasn't started filming. Though Paramount apparently wants to develop Star Trek 4 as a send-off for Pine and the rest of the Abrams-era cast, how many people outside of Trek's hardcore fandom will actually care about this, given the ridiculous amount of time that's passed since Beyond? But, I mean, what's the alternative? Rebooting the series again and hoping that they can strike casting gold once more? And as the disastrous recent Section 31 streaming movie proved, even films based on the popular current TV shows aren't exactly a sure thing. Ultimately, it wouldn't be that shocking if Paramount scuttled all their plans for Trek movies and just trained their focus on expanding the TV universe instead. Will Trek ever boldly go back to theaters again? It doesn't look too likely right now. Number 3, Downton Abbey. Much as the second Downton Abbey movie was subtitled A New Era, it certainly felt like a fitting capper to the entire historical drama franchise. Given that it concluded with the death of Maggie Smith's legendary Violet Crawley, what more apt sign-off could there possibly be for Julian Fellowes' beloved series? But in 2024, a third film began production, which is itself being touted as the real end to the series. Except with the series' most popular figurehead character no longer being around, and Maggie Smith's recent passing ensuring she can't even appear in a flashback cameo, are fans really gonna turn up for one more go-round? The heart and soul of the series is now gone, and so don't be shocked if Downton Abbey 3 colossally underperforms at the box office, with fans instead waiting to just watch it on streaming, or perhaps even feeling little incentive to watch at all without Smith's involvement. Granted, this would be a less disastrous scenario than most franchises on this list, given that Downton Abbey is winding down anyway, but Fellowes might have been better off just leaving it at 2 movies and moving on. Number 2, James Bond. James Bond is one of the most iconic and long-running movie franchises ever, having released 25 canonical entries since its debut in 1962. But a dark pall was recently cast over the series' future with the announcement that Amazon had gained full control of the IP. Though Amazon acquired MGM and by consequence 007 in 2022, Bond producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson nevertheless retained creative control of the franchise, and had reportedly refused Amazon's numerous pitches to develop a wider James Bond universe with TV spin-offs. But in late February, it was announced that Broccoli and Wilson had finally ceded full control to Amazon, with the streamer paying out an alleged $1 billion to finally convince the pair to walk away. It was an announcement that sent shockwaves throughout the Bond fandom, given Broccoli and Wilson's fiercely protective stewardship of the franchise for decades. Many immediately took to mourning 007 as a brand, given the likelihood that Amazon turns it into a content factory not unlike the Marvel Cinematic Universe or Star Wars. For the great many who loved that James Bond just showed up every few years, dropped a movie and then went away, it is seriously alarming that a company as content hungry as Amazon is now in full control of the property. Needless to say, they'll need to deliver some seriously impressive results with the next Bond film to curry much favour at all with fans, most of whom are already deeply skeptical of how respectful Amazon will be of its legacy. If Amazon ends up living down to expectations, then the unforgettable ending of No Time to Die could not feel much more apt. Number 1, Ice Age. The Ice Age series has been on a steady critical downslide ever since its first sequel, each of which has endured a worse critical reception than the one before it. The box office underperformance of the fifth film, 2016's Ice Age Collision Course, seemed to put the series on, well, ice. And the final nail was seemingly hammered in when Ice Age animation studio Blue Sky Studios was closed by Disney in 2021. However, Disney ultimately just pivoted to farming the work elsewhere, with critically panned Disney Plus spin-off The Adventures of Buck Wild having its animation outsourced to Bardell Entertainment. By this point, it truly felt like the series had nothing left to offer anyone. But last September, Ice Age 6 was formally confirmed for a theatrical release in December 2026. After years and years of increasingly stale, forgettable entries, it'll be fascinating to see whether a new Ice Age can still remain afloat in the theatrical space. But given that Ice Age hasn't been relevant for eons, it would not be remotely surprising if this thing just flops. And maybe that's for the best, really. All things must come to an end and melt, or something. I don't know.